Welcome to The Explainer. I am so incredibly excited you're joining me today because, well, we've got a fascinating and highly debated topic to map out. Today, we're unpacking the mechanics behind a viral video by creator Barry Cunningham. In it, he takes this really deep, critical dive right into the heart of California's election laws. Now look, this topic gets incredibly heated and the rhetoric online is intense for sure. But as focused learners, we're going to step back, completely strip away the noise, and just look objectively at the exact legal mechanisms he's pointing to. We're going to map out his core arguments, examine the specific state rules he highlights, and really try to understand why this debate has created such a massive stalemate on a national level. So, here's our roadmap for today. First, the core legal claim. Second, California's ballot rules. Third, analyzing late vote surges. And fourth, the audit stalemate. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The core legal claim. Legalizing the process.
Okay, let's dive into this. The creator's central argument is entirely based on how we actually define the word fraud. In his video, he argues that critics of California's elections are kind of focusing on the wrong thing altogether. He states that the state didn't commit traditional fraud, like secretly stuffing ballot boxes in the dead of night. Instead, his claim is that lawmakers altered the legal boundaries so significantly that actions which would absolutely be considered fraudulent anywhere else are now perfectly legal. As he puts it, they legalized fraud, meaning officials can confidently step up to a microphone and state there is zero evidence of illicit activity, simply because the activity itself was written right into the law.
Moving on to Section 2. California's ballot rules, deadlines, and dates. So the video critiques some very specific bureaucratic mechanisms, pointing out two major allowances in California law. First, the state accepts mail-in ballots up to 7 days after Election Day. But the real friction point he highlights is that second bullet. According to the creator, who actually claims to have spoken with a Postal Service whistleblower about this, the law states that the proof a ballot was mailed on time isn't strictly bound to an official Postal Service postmark. Instead, a handwritten date can be accepted. He gives this theoretical example. If a ballot was supposed to arrive by June 1st but shows up late, someone could literally just use a handwritten date of May 31st to validate it. In his view, this is the exact legal machinery that makes an invalid vote quote-unquote real.
And that brings us to another highly debated mechanism highlighted in the source material: ballot curing. Now, fundamentally, this is a civic process designed to ensure maximum voter participation, but the video frames it as a critical vulnerability. Basically, ballot curing is the process where election officials actively track down voters to fix technical errors on their ballots, maybe a missing signature or an improperly checked box, rather than just throwing the ballot in the trash. Let's walk through exactly how the creator outlines this process playing out. Step 1, officials identify a ballot with an error. Step 2, they track down the voter. He uses a hypothetical voter, Fred Jones at 123 Elm Street. If Fred forgot to check a box, officials don't discard the ballot. They literally go find Fred. Step 3, the voter fixes the error to validate it. The creator views this entire process with intense skepticism, arguing that it's just another legal avenue used to take a ballot that legally should not count, apply some whiteout or a correction, and officially validate it. He even goes so far as to sarcastically compare the politicians passing these laws to cinematic villains like Dr. Evil, arguing that their strategy is ingenious but totally nefarious.
All right, Section 3. Analyzing late vote surges, shifting the outcomes. To back this up, the video uses a graph from an LA County mayoral race to illustrate the creator's statistical claims. On election night, the data showed frontrunner Karen Bass leading, with Spencer Pratt in second and another candidate, referred to as Rumman, trailing way, way down at the bottom. But then, as the late mail-in ballots were counted over the following days, the creator notes a massive statistical anomaly. According to his analysis of the data, the frontrunners, Bass and Pratt, suddenly flatlined. They barely received any of the late mail-in votes. Meanwhile, that trailing candidate, Rahman, saw their vote count absolutely skyrocket, straight up. The creator argues this completely defies mathematical logic, that in a deep blue city, none of those late voters would choose the clear frontrunner, Karen Bass. Let's look at a second case study he provides to back up this theory: LA County Measure ER. This was a referendum to increase the local sales tax. The creator points out a timeline here that he finds highly suspicious. On election night, when the polls closed, the vast majority of in-person voters said no. And as he points out, this makes intuitive sense, right? I mean, nobody, regardless of their income bracket, generally wants to volunteer to pay a higher sales tax, especially when people are already complaining about the high cost of gas and groceries. Yet, 4 or 5 days later, as the mail-in ballots were tallied, a massive surge of votes came in as yes, ultimately flipping the entire result.
So the absolutely crucial point the creator makes connects to this number right here, 30 days. In California, officials have roughly 30 days to finalize the vote count. Cunningham's theory is that election night no longer actually determines the winner. It merely provides a mathematical target. He claims that once officials see the gap in votes on election night, say a candidate is down by exactly 5,000 votes, they then have a massive, legally protected window to calculate exactly how many mail-in votes need to be, quote-unquote, found or cured to alter the outcome.
Which brings us to Section 4, the audit stalemate, federal versus state. The video features this really fascinating clip from a national news debate that just perfectly encapsulates this stalemate. On side A, you have the news anchor, who represents the mainstream media and state officials' perspective. Their argument is clear and incredibly forceful. You have an ethical responsibility to stop poisoning the public's view because you have absolutely zero proof of fraud. But on side B, the creator's argument is, well, of course we don't have proof because state laws completely block us from gathering any evidence in the first place. It is a massive circular argument. One side demands evidence, and the other side claims the evidence is locked in a legal vault.
This stalemate builds into what the creator calls the federal brick wall. He points out that whenever these California election practices are challenged in court, judges routinely throw the cases out. Why? Well, because legally, elections are run by the states, not the federal government. There is simply no legal basis for federal inspectors to audit a state's voter rolls if the state refuses to grant access. The creator describes this as California building a geofence around their election system. He even notes that if a conservative governor, like a Steve Hilton, were to magically win in California, they couldn't just dismantle this system via an executive order. The rules are baked way too deeply into state law by the legislature. Which brings us to the creator's final, incredibly provocative question, one that really leaves us with a lot to think about regarding the future of American elections. He asks, if California has successfully created this legal geofence where they control the timeline, they control the curing process, and they completely block federal audits, why aren't other states doing the exact same thing? If these are the new legally sound rules of the game, why wouldn't political parties in other states replicate this exact blueprint to secure their own power? It's a fascinating question about state versus federal control, and it perfectly summarizes the intense, viral debate surrounding our modern election mechanics. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep asking questions.